these typical strategic plans that never leave the page they're written on, and everybody in the firm knows it. The one drives momentum, the other creates inertia. And so what we've found is that by the time we've been involved with them for 6 to 9 months typically, that they're looking and going, we've done one, our team is finished with this one, where's the next? And they go back to that list they created in the original retreat and go, that was the next one, let's get on it.
You're listening to the Legal Mastermind Podcast with your hosts Ryan Klein and Chase Williams, the go-to podcast for learning from the experts in the legal community about effective ways to grow and manage your law firm.
Today on the Legal Mastermind Podcast, we have Chris Kirby from Bridgefield Group. And along with Chris, we have my co-host Ryan Klein. Good morning, guys. How you guys doing?
Doing really well, thank you.
Awesome. We're super excited to have you on the podcast today, Chris. And I think the major topic we're going to cover today is strategic planning. I think that's something that we've all attempted to do, maybe thought we've done, but haven't executed as effectively as possible. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I've been licensed to practice law since 1990 and continue to carry an active law license. For the last 20 years, though, I've been involved in training, coaching, consulting with law firms and throughout the United States and internationally. We've worked boots on the ground in 38 states. We worked with lawyers and law firms from every state in the U.S. and from more than 40 countries.
I think leading with, you have a pretty startling figure right here that says 97% of plans never leave the paper they're written on. So I think that's
right.
A pretty major glaring fact that's worth elaborating on.
How do you define strategic planning?
Well, strategic planning would be defined for us as the firm and its leadership taking a step back and thinking broadly about where the firm is and where the firm wants to go. Obviously, everybody, has some idea about where they want to go. They want to make more money. But what does that look like? How are you thinking strategically versus tactically? Firms oftentimes will, spend a lot of time just doing all the time. And then on a very episodic basis, they'll get together and try to figure out, okay, so what exactly are we doing all this for? And when you think about that, that's the strategic side of things. Unfortunately, the reality is that the vast majority of those plans never leave the paper that they're written on. In fact, Forbes magazine did a study that showed that 97% of strategic plans are a complete waste of time and an immense waste of resources. And when we saw that, we realized that we could do something different. And so that's what we've been doing with law firms now for some time.
Is this type of planning where it's, hey, this is where I want to be in 6 months or 6 years?
Good question. And the reality is it's kind of in between. There's near-term strategic planning, and we would define that as the next 8 to 12 months. There's midterm, sort of the next 13 months to 5 years, and then on out over the horizon. It's really difficult to get beyond about 3 years. The market changes and your personnel change, and so many things get different. We really suggest that a firm sort of look at the near term plus, right? So what are we doing over the next 12? And what are the broader, larger strategic initiatives that we want to sort of have held sort of off to the side? So it's like, you finish this one, what's next? But the real issue is not so much about thinking about the big ideas or the big dreams. It's changing those dreams into reality. In a lot of firms, you have everybody who thinks that they have a stake in it, that they have a say in it, because you have so many lawyers think that they, and most of the time do, own the law firm on some level. And so what you have is a bunch of folks who feel like they have a veto power over what's going to happen, but don't necessarily have any ideas about what they'd like to see happen. That's one challenge. The second great challenge in strategic planning is once you get the plan in place, how can anyone be held accountable to actually do what they say that they're going to do? And we've built a system and process around that that takes the strategic planning piece and really allows the firm to have certainty that the investment they make in time and in effort and in energy and in money is going to translate into execution on the strategic initiatives that they decide that they want to deploy.
I know you're already answering a lot of this, but as far as the plan itself, 3% actually being executed is a pitiful number in reality. So do you find it that the plan itself that the law firms are making, is it just too lofty Are they just expecting to do too much in too short of a period of time, or they just don't have the tools to actually execute on the plan?
I think it's really actually different, and there are a couple of pieces. Okay, so one is that there's the old phrase that bad data in produces bad results out, right? And so the firm goes blind into the strategic plan and has no clue about the reality of where the firm is today. They have a lot of anecdotal stuff, right? The managing partner thinks the firm is doing this, and the executive committee thinks it's doing that, and the big producers within the firm have a totally different vision. It's all over the map, and there is no cohesive, real, data-supported picture of where the firm is. And if you don't have that picture, then you're screwed. There's no way you're going to get anything done. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is that the firm sets up these, it's like from on high. You've got the EC, the executive committee, or the managing partner, or the partner meeting, or whatever. They come up with all these ideas, but they have no buy-in. They haven't, and it's not tied in any way to the reality of where the firm is or where the firm wants to go. And then the third challenge is, even assuming you come out with a couple of strategic ideas, it's like, who's going to do them? And most of the time what happens is someone gets voluntold to run the strategic initiative. A lot of times that person has no positional authority to be able to do it. So it's like the partners tell the marketing director, go do this thing. And the marketing director is like, with, tons of great initiative and tons of expertise and tons of knowledge, but how does a quote unquote non-lawyer force the lawyers to do anything? And if you can't get the lawyers to do what they have to do, then the initiative is dead before it starts. And so what do you do to change that dynamic? And what we do is we get the firm, first of all, to commit to allowing us to collect a lot of data. So and maybe it's, this might be a good, time for me to sort of walk a little bit through the 50,000 foot view of what we do, and it might be helpful. What we do is the firm contracts with us to come in and collect a lot of information about where it is. So we will send a questionnaire to everyone in the firm, from the receptionist to the mailroom person, if they have one, to the paralegals, the professional staff that surrounds the attorneys, the associates, the partners. Everybody is asked some fairly broad questions about what they feel like is working and not working within the firm, the challenges they face, the opportunities they'd like to pursue. We collect all of that data. Then what we do is we interview key players, which will obviously include things like managing partner and executive committee members, but it also oftentimes includes a person who's nowhere on the org chart, but is critically important to the organization. We had an example just recently. A firm had a woman who was the first professional hire of the firm as a receptionist. Been there forever, knew everything, knew where every skeleton was hidden, and over again, her name came up. She wasn't on the org chart in any place that would say, oh, she's a, quote, important person to the firm. And yet she was critical to interview to find out what was going on. We collect all that data. We anonymize all that data so that all of the answers cannot be tied to any individual. And then with that, now the firm has a good chance to know where they actually are. We bring whoever they decide, generally it's a partner meeting, together in a 2-day retreat. The first day, half day of which is, and by the way, we prohibit alcohol at any point in time prior to, giving them the state of the firm talk, because we don't want anybody with a couple of beers in them hearing about the true state of the firm, because oftentimes there's some challenges to look at. So we take all that massive data that we've collated and we have analyzed, and we present it to the firm through the lens of leadership and culture and performance, which everybody would call business development. So now they know how they're led, what the challenges are, what the culture is like, whether things are working or not. And they have a sense about where they are. From that, we then will lead them through sort of a brain dump of possible initiatives that they might want to have. And again, we do this through some anonymous polling and things like that to get the reality of what they want to try to do. Then from the laundry list of possible initiatives, the group of partners, whatever the retreat participants are, select a certain number of those initiatives that they have decided by their own vote and their own voice that they want to do. Notice they're not being handed to them by, from the top. They are buying into and investing in what initiatives they want to execute on. Once they do that, we have a procedure, a system by which we get them to self-select which one initiative each individual is going to participate in and commit to. Once we do that, then we go through another system where we get them to decide about how they will allow themselves to be held accountable. So now you got the lawyers telling the entire room, hey, you want to hold me, I'm agreeing that I'm going to be held accountable to do the things that I've said I will do. And in the event that I don't do what I say I'm going to do, this is the result. This is the price I'll pay, so to speak. So, for example, we did a firm where the managing partner was a monstrous fan of the University of Texas. And if you're in Texas, then you know that UT's primary rival is Texas A&M University. They just don't like each other. Managing partner was a huge fan of UT. Biggest producer in the firm was such a huge fan of Texas A&M that when I tried to hand him a orange felt tip marker to write on a flip chart, orange is the color of University of Texas, he refused to touch it. Okay. And so it was like, he was like, I'm not even going to touch an orange marker. You want me to write with something, I'm not writing with the color of UT. I mean, that's how strongly these guys felt. They decide how they will allow themselves to be held accountable, right? And these two guys, their accountability thing was, if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to pay $1,000 to the athletic foundation of the other school.
Oh, that
A&M dude was going to pay can you imagine? A&M guy says, I'm going to pay $1,000 to UT's athletic foundation. UT guy says, let me tell you something. They had a anticipated 12-month run to do their initiatives. They were done in 8 because there was no way on God's green earth those dudes were going to hand a dime to the other school.
That is a level of motivation. Yeah, I figured you'd say something like where the other ones, had, or like a jersey or something, but
no, man, they picked it. Now, here's the other thing. One of the other guys in the room was like, okay, well, you can hold me accountable by if I don't do what I'm going to do, I'll shave my head. And everybody else in the room looked at him and they said, dude, you're already bald. That doesn't count. You've got to come up with something better. And so you see the secret sauce here is the participants are saying, are agreeing with their peers to be held accountable. And they are saying how that accountability will take place, right? Now, that gets them out of the retreat, but that's still in the 97%. And so what happens then is the firm has contracted with us to be, in essence, the accountability partners for them. And so we continue through in-person and conference call meetings with the teams surrounding each of the initiatives to help them execute and get them done. But that's not enough. We then pull those teams all together, again, if it's a multi-office firm, through conference call or video chat or whatever, right? And now they have to report to each other on what they've done. Insert a little bit of competition in a law firm, things get done. And so there are a number of moving parts to it all. But when you look at it, a single strategic initiative can move the needle in double digits in revenue for a law firm if it is done and executed well, versus these typical strategic plans that never leave the page they're written on, and everybody in the firm knows it. The one drives momentum, the other creates inertia. And so what we've found is that by the time we've been involved with them for 6 to 9 months, typically, that they're looking and going, we've done one, our team is finished with this one, where's the next? And they go back to that list they created in the original retreat and go, that was the next one, let's get on it. And it's a system that creates its own, it's almost like the fire that creates its own weather. It brings in its own resources. It creates its own momentum. It continues to build upon itself.
You have this long-term plan. It's executed based off what you're discussing. The law firm, with your guidance, successfully executes the plan, fulfills what the responsibilities were. That doesn't mean that they're never going to have a plan again. So is this like an annual thing, or is it biannually? How does it work when you want to kind of build the momentum and keep it going?
Right. So here's what happens. So you do the first, right? And you walk in, you do the state of the firm thing, and typically you got some long faces. I mean, because it's the first time that the firm has ever gotten an accurate picture of what they really are and who they really are and how they are viewed from the inside out. It's a look behind the curtain. Then you do this thing over the course of the next 12 months, and you see these folks who at first they're like, the only reason I did what I said I was going to is because I knew I had to be on a conference call on Tuesday, or whatever. But then what happens is you start to see things happen, like typical things that firms will often do are things like client segmentation. They'll start to figure out what exactly the clients are that they want to keep and those that they want to lose. They'll start to see their per partner profits go up. They'll start to see retention increased. They'll start to see, greater positive response from things like their summer associate class or whatever. They'll start to see that these initiatives are driving real change in the firm. Then you get to the next, typically, spring or summer when they're going to do their next retreat. And that state of the firm thing that was so candidly depressing last year is suddenly they're sitting there going, man, are you kidding me? We got this done. And then they're like, let's do it again, and so it becomes sort of a re-energizing time and a celebration of the things that they've pulled off. Now, you'll see sort of a meteoric rise over the first couple of years of doing something like this, because there are a lot of things that need to get done. A lot of things need to get accomplished, kind of the big rocks, right? And then that'll tend to tail and level off a bit. And then you'll see a firm that might pause for a year or two. That's a dangerous moment for them, because you're either growing or you're dying. You're never static. And so at those moments are real good times for them to take a hard look at the strategic next play, the longer view, when they can sort of harvest and enjoy the fruits of their labor, and then also say, now what? What's next? So you might see them doing a couple in rapid succession, a pause for a little while, and then more, pick it back up.
I absolutely love the idea of having your business at a level where you're able to fire a client or choose the clients that you want to work with. I think that's a big game changer for many businesses that you don't really think about until you get to that level where it's like the frustration, the back and forth, the weight it puts on your team dealing with clients that are just headaches. It ends up being not worth it.
Right, exactly. And, this was really something, so many ideas are good ones that you've gotten from elsewhere. Jack Welch, the famous GE guy, every year would go across the spectrum of General Electric Holdings and say, we're going to fire and lose the bottom 10%. So if it's a bottom 10% of employees were fired, bottom 10% of managers were fired, bottom 10% of vendors were fired, bottom 10% of enterprises. And the idea was, if you eliminate that sort of bottom end, then, you'll create the room and the space to grow on the other end. If you look at the client base of any law firm, it's almost like a hockey stick on its back. It's that classic 80-20 rule. A small number of your clients are representing a large portion of your revenue. The challenge is, what do you do with the long tail of that, or the long sort of handle of that hockey stick? And it really bifurcates into two groups. One is a group of clients that aren't giving you much right now, however you want to define much, whether it's referrals or revenue or number of deals or whatever, but could keep them. There's another group on that handle of the hockey stick, though, that are clients that, when looked at objectively, are a pain. They require a lot of attention. They don't produce a lot of revenue. They're all of that stuff. And by oftentimes we'll see firms, one of the strategic initiatives will be to take a look at that and think about how to manage that third group to a result, help them find a different firm that's not a competitor, something like that. And at the same time, have a strategic initiative on the business and client development side that gives you comfort and certainty that you will be able to replace them. Because that's really the reason that firms don't fire clients, is because they worry they'll never get a new one. And so you sort of have to have those hand in glove.
What are some other unique strategies that you've seen that pay off pretty big for law firms?
Let's address sort of the three big silos, if you will, of professional development, because they all intersect. And that is business development performance is one. A second one is culture, broadly defined, and a third one is leadership. If you think about the sort of in reverse order leadership, the reality is, and this is not a dig on law firm leadership, okay, but there are no leadership classes taught in law school. Most lawyers haven't gone through any, business and that sort of thing. Like they haven't run businesses except the law firm, which in many respects is not run like an ordinary business. And so there's a reason that law firms have managing partners, not leading partners. And in firm leadership, you're looking at any time, if you're an associate who has a secretary or legal assistant working with you, you're in a leadership position. If you're a practice group leader, you're in a leadership position. If you're in the XCOM or you're a managing partner, you're definitely in a leadership position. Those are very lonely places to be, especially when you don't know how to do it and you haven't had anyone help you to develop that skill. And it is a skill. And so a very easy thing to do is to get some good leadership coaching for those who are going into leadership, so they're not there yet, and also those who are in leadership. Now, that's the upside. The downside of that is that, and I am an attorney, so I guess I can say this, but there's a lot of ego that flies in law firms. And you have to check your ego at the door when you sign up to allow yourself to be coached in leadership, because inevitably what you're talking about is augmenting and strengthening those things you're doing well, but also looking at those things that could be done differently to make you a better leader. And sometimes that's a little bit challenging to the ego. But in terms of implementation, it's really easy. It's really inexpensive. The investment, the return on investment is exponential, because well-led law firms are a force to be reckoned with in the marketplace. With culture, that's really something that's never looked at in a broad enough perspective. These days, obviously, I'm on the Diversity in the Profession Committee for the State Bar of Texas. My partner and I do a tremendous amount of work in diversity and all of that. And we coach diversity. We do a lot of stuff. But if you think about culture in a law firm, it needs to be looked at through the prism not only of diversity, which might be ethnic diversity or gender diversity or preference diversity, but also things like generational diversity. Older lawyers who are running the firm now, but in the sort of the second half of their practice, so to speak, with younger lawyers that they're working with, professional staff of a different generation. Those kinds of things present tremendous challenges that can be addressed very easily, but you have to address them with both eyes open, thoughtfully, and with two words that we like to bandy about, with attention and with intention. On the business development side, clearly there are plenty of initiatives there. I think there's a dangerous move that's been on foot for at least the last number of years with law firms, especially large firms, which have moved all of the business development in-house. And the reason I say that's dangerous is because they've just sort of changed the name on the door of their marketing professionals. Marketing and business development are like two wings of an airplane, and they require different skills. They require different thoughtfulness. They require different training. And they're the same person who is an excellent marketer can't suddenly, in the flash of an eye, become a great business developer. Some are, but oftentimes that's a huge challenge. And what law firms have done in the interest of saving money is cost themselves a fortune, because what they've done is they've taken great marketers and said, we don't want marketers anymore. We want business developers. Do that. And they've taken tremendously competent people and put them in a role that is unknown to them. Why? Because to come and hire a firm like mine to come in and do business development, which we've done with excellence for over 20 years, is another expense on their balance sheet. Whereas they've got those people in-house already. So they say, okay, we're just going to have you do it. It's unfair to the people in-house, and the results that it creates for the firm are inferior to what they could do otherwise. If they kept those people in-house doing what those people are fantastic at, that business developers wouldn't necessarily be, and asking them to do a role for which they didn't sign up, they weren't hired to do, and they feel uncomfortable in.
We strongly believe in like the right people, the right seats philosophy. I guess that's good to great. We like that book a lot.
Sure. Yeah. Jim Collins. When thinking about how strategic planning might apply in this year, I mean, we're now obviously into the new decade. The thing I would simply say is that there's an old saying that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. And so if I were in a strategic position in a law firm, I would be thinking hard about how to make the next partner retreat or executive committee meeting one that is really going to change the trajectory of this firm in the near term and in the long, in the ways that really matter to law firms. And that, let's face it, involve at least two. One is satisfaction in the work environment, because we all spend most of our waking lives at work, and so we better enjoy it. And the other is to be able to make the kind of money that you want to make, working with the sorts of clients that you enjoy, and doing the kind of work that you want to do. In both of those ways, the type of strategic planning that we've been talking about are absolutely dead on, and you don't have to wait a long time to see the results. What you do have to do is commit to the idea that you can do strategic planning in a different way that will make sense, that will be the best thing that the firm has done for itself, perhaps in its entire existence, and it's something that you and your colleagues will look at as a transformative moment. So really, I think the thing is, if not now, when? And if you'd like, obviously, I'd love to talk to anybody about this and share any thoughts, ideas, answer any questions, all of that, because as you can see, I'm pretty passionate about this stuff.
What's the best way for someone to contact you if they want to discuss in more detail?
Well, the best way is either to just give me a call at 512-589-1777. It's my mobile, and it's always in my pocket. And unless I'm talking to somebody else, I always answer. I'd love to talk. Or email me directly at chris@thebridgefieldgroup.com. And obviously happy for you to go to the website and take a look, but everybody's situation is unique. And I would love to talk to people about how to take the concepts we've been discussing here and apply them in your firm to help you to have the right people around you doing the right things and making the right kind of money and enjoying your career as much as you possibly can.
Thanks for listening to the Legal Mastermind podcast. If you're interested in working with Ryan and Chase, please email mastermind@marketmymarket.com. Make sure to join the free mastermind group for growing and managing your firm at lawfirmmastermind.com. Ryan Klein and Chase Williams are the managing partners at Market My Market, one of the top legal marketing companies in the United States.